Hare Krishna. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. My name is Madhavananda Das, and these are our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is part of a series we've been doing called Meeting in Kuruksetra, and this is part 99. And today's topic we've titled Krishna's Secret Message to the Gopis, the special role of Uddhava in Krishna and Gaura lila. So we'll just say a few prayers before we begin. Gaura Prakanya Gana Gotra Goloruhadam Gauranga Gudatama Gopyata Kolpa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavande Chamadye Chahari Sarvatra Giyate Mukham Karoti Vachalam Bangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Niranchare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. So we're continuing with our series we called Meeting in Kuruksetra, and I want to invite requested devotees, and especially senior devotees like Sarvajit Prabhu, my Guru Jana, and Nanta Garanga Prabhu and others who are watching today, to please share some reflections or comments, if you like, at the end of this discussion. So we're continuing this discussion about, based on the 47th chapter, the 10th canto, which is a Brahma Gita, and the talks between Uddhava and the gopis. Jiva Goswami offers his pranam in the 46th chapter, the 10th canto, in his commentary to Uddhava. Artaika sadhanam krishnam artan brajajanam shatan tam chatasvasakam bhaktam archivande durasaya. He says that Artan Saranam, I'm taking shelter of Krishna with a hopeless heart. That personality, I offer my respects to him, who's Artan Brajajanam's Chitan, who's the only shelter for persons who are suffering, who's the only shelter for the suffering people of Braj, and I offer my pranams tam chatasvakam bhaktam archyavande darase, that devotee, Uddhava, who alleviated their suffering. So, just to look back a little bit on our last few sessions, we were speaking a little bit from some of the gopis' response to Krishna's message, which came from Uddhava, and trying to draw a line. This is our purpose in these talks, to try to draw a connection between Krishna's Braj lila, his Mathura and Dwarka lilas, and the pastimes, the meeting in Kuruksetra between Krishna and the gopis, and the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. So in our last session we read text 53 from the 47th chapter, in which the gopis, they describe Uddhava as being Gyata, they understood, Gyata-atmanam adhoksajam, as being non-different, Atmanam, from the Supreme Lord. And we gave some different explanations about that and how the gopis saw 4 different meanings in the verses that Krishna was speaking, and we explained some of that. I'm not going to go over that again in this review right now. And how this is also reflected when the gopis met with Krishna in Kuruksetra, and it's also reflected in the feelings of separation by Srimati Radharani, and we sung a song by the poet Yadunath Das about how Radharani became a mendicant or sannyasi. And we, in our last session, we looked to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to understand what is the mood, what is the understanding of renunciation in our line. And Rupa Goswami there gives a verse, Ya kenap yati bhagyena jata shradosya sevane nati sakto nevairagya bhag asham adyatikara so. That personality is ati bhagyena. He's very, very fortunate. And he has adhikar for bhakti, who's nati sakto nevairagya, who's neither too attached to material objects or too detached. We don't place so much stress on external sannyas, or what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati sometimes labeled karma sannyas, or normal sannyas in Varnashram Dharma in our line. And Rupa Goswami, in fact, then in the next verse goes on, as we discussed elaborately in our last session, what is the real meaning of adhikar? The real meaning of adhikar for bhakti is not whether you're attached or detached from material things, but the real meaning of adhikar, and then he gives us 2 verses from the 20th chapter, the 11th canto, speaking about a fallen bhakta. And the Krishna says, Jata Sharama Katasu, that someone in the beginning, they have faith in my kata, but nirvina sarva karmasu, vedadukatmakam kamam, they know that sense gratification is very bad, but parityage panishra, they can't give it up. So, tato bhajeta mam pritaha, he says they should still worship me with affection. Shraddha lordada nishchaya, with faith in a very convicted way, firm way. Jusa manasatan kama, at the same time they're engaged in their sense gratification, which they know is bad. And dukkha darkams chagarhayan, they should lament that thing. This is what Rupa Goswami and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as we mentioned in his book Bhajan Rahasya, described as being adhikar for bhakti. So today we want to go on to text number 54. That was our little looking back at our previous sessions. In text 54, Sukadeva Goswami describes what happened after the gopis spoke. He says, Uvasa katachin masan gopinam vinudam suchaha Krishna lila katam gayan ramayan asa gokulam. Which our BBT translation describes it. Uddhava remained there in Braj for several months, dispelling the gopis' sorrow by chanting the topics of Lord Krishna's pastimes. Thus he brought joy to all the people of Gokul. The verse describes it, Ramayam asa gokulam. Ramayam, asa means this desire. And Ramayan means joy. Actually, the very word Uddhava in Sanskrit has several different meanings. Uddhava is a name, of course, for Krishna's messenger, but Uddhava literally means joy and pleasure. And Uddhava also means a festival or a holiday. So Uddhava literally is the pleasure and joy, both for the residents of Braj and, as we'll be hearing later, for Krishna himself. So how did Uddhava dispel the sorrow of the gopis? Uvasa, he resided there. Katachit Masan. Masa means month. For some months he stayed there. And I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur who comments that Uddhava stayed there for 6 or 9 months. And at that time, Gopinam Vinudasuchaha, he alleviated, he dispelled the sucha, the unhappiness of the gopis. How did he do that? This is such a very important lesson for all of us. Krishna lila katam gaya, by speaking Krishna Katha. Because with this Krishna Katha, the first canto of the Bhagavatam says, Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. Just by hearing, just by putting yourself in front of that subject matter. And some of our acharyas have commented in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that even if you don't understand what's being said, but still, Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. If you just hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Shoka Moha Bhaya. Your lamentation, Moha, your illusion, and your Bhaya, your fear, Apaha, will all be dispelled. So this is our solution. I appreciate Niranjan Maharaj's comments. Sometimes I've seen devotees write to him, as they do many senior Vaishnavas and gurus in our line, and they say, Maharaj, I have this problem, and my wife this, and my husband that, and this thing and that thing. And Maharaj writes him back, and he often comments the same thing. He says, I only have one solution. If you're looking for a financial solution, if you're looking for even a solution of counseling or psychiatric advice, I don't have that. My only solution is Krishna Katha. But this is the ultimate solution. And we can understand it from this verse that when we find ourselves in difficult situations, the response of the devotees is to take shelter of Krishna. This is the gift that Srila Prabhupada gave us. Srila Prabhupada came to give us this Krishna consciousness movement. And if we find ourselves experiencing fear, lamentation, or illusion, then it means we're not hearing properly. Or we're not hearing properly, meaning we're not hearing from a proper source. We're hearing from some non-devotee or some person who's not speaking, he's not quoting Shastra. Because Narottam Das Thakur, he says that we have these 3 pramanas for ourselves. He says, Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, Vakya, Chiteti, Koriya, Aikya. These 3 things. In the beginning, we want to hear from Sadhu. And what do we hear from Sadhu? We hear Shastra. So if someone is speaking on Srimad Bhagavatam, but they're not quoting Shastra, maybe they're telling us something about psychological things or some social things. Still, no matter how wise it may seem what they're saying, it's not going to be able to alleviate our suffering and our anxiety. And there's so many sufferings, so many anxieties in this world. And we see sometimes even devotees, they think that yes, I'm taking shelter of Krishna, but then something comes up. A war comes up. Or a divorce comes up. Or this thing or that thing. Or their wife leaves them. And then they think, oh my God, I know I should take shelter of Krishna, but this is different right now. This situation is different and I can't do it. No. Therefore, Rupa Goswami teaches us that Jata Shadama Katasu. In the beginning, we have some faith in Krishna Katha. But even we have that faith, maybe Prityage Pranishvaraha, we can't give up our sense gratification. Even though Veda Dukatmakam Kamam, we know it's going to give me all kinds of suffering. Maybe we are suffering. But still, Tatoba Jeta Mam Pritaha Shradhalur Jadhanishchaya. Don't give it up. Just go on hearing Krishna Katha. It's such a very, very important thing. So this is one lesson from this verse today. And this verse is describing about Uddhava, how he resided. It's particularly mentioning Uvasa Katachin Masan, that he was staying for some time there. Gopinam Vidana Suchaha. He was staying there and he was dispelling the unhappiness of the gopis. So in this verse, we also see something of Gaura lila. In the words of my revered spiritual master, he sometimes would say that Krishna lila is Gaura lila, is Krishna lila is Gaura lila. You can't separate them. So this is speaking about Krishna lila. But Krishna lila is not just static. It's not just one-sided. Rather, it's ecstatic. It's multidimensional. And this Krishna lila, this verse, will later be unfolded in the further feelings will be unfolded in Kuruksetra, and it'll be further unfolded in Jagannath Puri, in Gaura lila. So another understanding we could draw from this, Uvasaka Chinmasan Gopinam Vinana Suchaha, that Uddhava stayed there for several months and thereby dispelled the gopi's sorrow by Krishna Lila Katam Gayan, speaking about Krishna's pastimes. This is also what happened in Gaura Lila, here in Jagannath Puri, when Uddhava came again as Paramananda Puri. One of Uddhava's names, according to Jiva Goswami in his commentary in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, one of his names is Pavana Vyadi. Pavana means the wind. Pavana Vyadi means a disease of the wind. It means kind of someone who has some mental illness, or in this case it means someone who's overcome with prema. And Jiva Goswami comments, he says that Uddhava was given this name by popular consensus. Everybody agreed that he's Pavana Vyadi. He has this wind disease, meaning that he's mad in Krishna Prema. But that madness we see is part of the cause of Gaura Lila. Kavi Karnapur in his Gaura Ganadish Deepika says, Puri Paramanandoya Asit Uddhava Pura. That Uddhava became Paramananda Puri. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has also written a book, a little bit of a rare book called Gaura Gana Sarup Tattva Chandrika. And he says the same thing. Uddhava Krishna Mantriya Paramananda Eva Saha. That Uddhava, who is Krishna's mantri, Krishna's messenger, he became Paramananda Puri. So we want to look a little bit about Paramananda Puri. Paramananda Puri is a very, very important personality in Gaura Lila. How and why is he so important? By studying Paramananda Puri, we can understand something more about Uddhava, because all of these things are connected. And today I want to go to a few different books, partly Lochan Das Thakur's Chaitanya Mangal. In the Sutra Kanda, he offers his pranams to Paramananda Puri. Puri Jepe Paramananda Ar Vishnu Puri Gadadhara Dasa Jay Bandiva Sirupari. He says, I take their feet on my head and offer my pranams to these different Puris, to Paramananda Puri, to Vishnu Puri, and to Gadadhar Das. These are very important persons. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kaviraj Goswami, in Adi Lila chapter 9, he describes that the root of the Chaitanya tree are 9 primary sannyasi associates, one of whom was Paramananda Puri. So Paramananda Puri is one of the roots of the Chaitanya tree. Lochan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Mangal in Seshakanda, in the first part, he explains that Paramananda Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And when Mahaprabhu was in South India, he left Rangaji, he met Paramananda Puri. And just looking at each other, they began to cry. So many streams of tears were coming down. And when Paramananda Puri saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he remembered the teachings of Madhavendra Puri. And Madhavendra Puri, previous to him, he quoted a verse from the Vayu Purana, which some people say is from the Garuda Purana. I can't comment on that. I haven't looked in the original. But it's Lochan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Mangal says that it's from Vayu Purana. Kale pratama sanyayan lakshmi kanto bhavishyati daru brahma samipasta sanyasa gora vigraha. Famous verse. Which speaks about Gauranga Mahaprabhu, how Kale Pratama Sanyayam, in the beginning, the Pratama Sanyaya, the beginning of Kali Yuga, Lakshmi Kanta Bhavishyati, that the husband of Lakshmi Devi, Lord Narayan, Bhavishyati, he's going to appear, Daru Brahma Samipasta, he'll appear as Daru Brahma, Lord Jagannath, and Sannyasa Gaura Vigraha. He'll take sannyas and Daru Brahma Samipasta. He'll stay near that form of Lord Jagannath in Purushottam Ketra, Jagannath Puri Dham. And Lochan Das Thakur describes the conversation that Madhavendra Puri had with Paramananda Puri. Kali Juge Sankirtana Dharma Rati Bade Janani Bal Krishna Pratama Sanjaya Bhittare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. He said that Kali Juge Sankirtana Dharma Rati Bade, that in Kali Yuga, to give Sankirtan Dharma, Krishna himself, Janamiba, Krishna is going to appear, Pratama Sanjaya Bhittare. Interesting, he says that he'll appear early one evening, Pratama Sanjaya, in the first Sandhya, the first part of the evening. And it's not clear to me, maybe someone who knows more about this, Sarvadrik Prabhu has commented that Sajjana Maharaj is also present here, listening right now. My pranams to Sajjana Maharaj. Maybe someone has some comments what this means. I find it interesting. Did it mean literally that Madhavendra Puri was predicting that you're going to meet him in the evening? Or was it more symbolic that he's going to come when things appear to be getting dark? That could also be a symbolic meaning, that when things seem to be getting dark, then he's going to appear in your life. I'm not sure. And then he went on to describe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Gaura Dirga Kalebara Bahu Janasam, that he's going to have this Gaura Dirga Kaleva, this body which is golden, Bahu Janasam, he has very long arms, he's Singha-griva, his shoulders are like a lion's, he has a neck which is powerful as an elephant, Gajaskanda, and Kamala Lochan, he has lotus-like eyes. And Madhavendra Puri had told Paramananda Puri, Karuna Sagar Prabhu, that he's an ocean of compassion, Prema Avasi, he's the reservoir of prem, Nija Karunaya Doya, he's going to give that karuna, his own karuna, his mercy, Koribe Prakash, he's going to manifest that everywhere to everyone. This is a very special thing. And therefore Gauranga Mahaprabhu is Mahavadanyaya avatar. He's the most munificent incarnation because he's come to give something which hadn't been given before. And our Acharya's comment in this regard, because he's in the mood of Radha, where Radharani is described by our Acharyas as being the personification of the Karuna Shakti. In general, that Karuna Shakti is controlled by the Icha Shakti, the Lord's desire potency. And therefore, that Karuna Shakti is not allowed to freely be distributed everywhere. But when Krishna comes in the mood of Radha as Gauranga Mahaprabhu, then that Icha Shakti no longer controls the Karuna Shakti, and he becomes Mahavadanyaya avatar. So Madhavendra Puri then went on to tell Paramananda Puri, his disciple previously, Mora bhagya nahi mui deki ba noyane Tora deka hoila more kori hasmarane Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Ram Hare Hare. He said, Mora bhagya nahi, I have no good fortune. Mui deki ba noyane, I won't be able to see him with my eyes. And he said, but if you're fortunate, then you please Kore Smarna, More Kore Smarna, you please remember me at that time. I found this a very, very sweet and beautiful instruction. Madhavendra Puri is the guru, and he's telling Paramananda Puri that I can't see him, I can't see God, is what he's saying. That guru who is Tattvavit, and Tattvavit is described by Sridhar Swami in his commentary in the Gita. I'm trying to remember the Sanskrit. I don't recall the Sanskrit. But, I'm sorry? Yeah, but it means someone who directly sees the absolute truth. But here, Madhavendra Puri is saying, Mora bhagya nahi, I don't have good fortune. Mui deki va noyeni, I won't be able to see him with my eyes. But you, my disciple, if you're very fortunate, you may see him. And then at that time, you should please remember me. What does it mean to remember me? Remember, I'm your Gurudev. And in this way, Srila Prabhupada, in a similar way, in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam, when Dhruva Maharaj delivers his mother, who was his Vartman Pradarshika guru, aside from being his mother, was also a type of guru. When Dhruva Maharaj delivers her, Prabhupada writes in his purport, he says that in the same way I hope that I may have one disciple who will deliver me. In great humility, Srila Prabhupada speaking. But we find a similar mood here, spoken by Madhavendra Puri. So, Paramananda Puri, Eshe Bhagavan Maneti Padila. He realized this is that same Bhagavan that my Guru Maharaj told me about. So, Deki Paranama Kori Paramananda Puri. Seeing him, he offered his pranams to him. And then Mahaprabhu picked him up. Ki Kori Haboli. Mahaprabhu said, what are you doing? And Tola Hata Dari. Mahaprabhu embraced him. Gata Alingana Koila. Parama Santosha. He embraced very warmly Paramananda Puri. And then Chalila Thakur, Kahi E Lochandas. Lochandas Thakur says that then he again began traveling. A similar description is given in Murari Gupta's Chaitanya Charit Mahakabya in the 3rd canto, chapter 16, that Mahaprabhu, after leaving Rangaketra, he met Paramananda Puri. And when upon meeting him, he says the same thing, that Paramananda Puri, when he saw Mahaprabhu's golden body, he says, Paschamsi Paramananda Puri, Gauranga Vigraham. When he saw that Gauranga Vigraha, the body of Gauranga, literally meaning that golden body, that golden form, Guru Vakyam Anusmitya. At that time, he remembered the words of his Gurudev. So, a beautiful instruction for all of us. We should pray to Krishna that we may see him. But if we see Krishna, then immediately we should remember the instructions of our Gurudev. Sometimes, in giving some talks, we ask devotees a kind of rhetorical or theoretical question that, what if I told you, I came running into the room right now and I said, it's really amazing that Krishna's waiting outside the door, he wants to talk to you. What will you do? I asked this question to the devotees in the room. And a lot of times they just look a little blank. And then some of them say, well, I'll run there. And other ones say, well, I'll start chanting, or I'll offer prayers, or this or that. and I say, that's okay. For myself, I know what I'll do. I won't go there. Because I have no adhikar to go there. But I'll go to find my Gurudev. And I'll stand behind my Gurudev. Because how can I go to Krishna without my Gurudev? So indirectly, this is also what's being indicated both by Lochandas Thakur and by Murari Gupta in the writings, that after seeing Pashan Sri Paramananda Puri Gauranga Vigraha, after Paramananda Puri saw Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Guru Vakya Manusmitya, then he remembered the instructions of his Guru. And after remembering the instructions of his Guru, Murari Gupta says, Premashru Pulakanchitaha, that Paramananda Puri began to manifest this ecstatic symptoms of love. And in such a beautiful exchange then, Mahaprabhu looked at Paramananda Puri and said, Ishvaro pi puri pada sabritta dharma palakaha nanama paramo prito dandavat sirasa bhuvi. That Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he saw Paramananda Puri, he fell down, Puri Padam, he fell down at the feet of Paramananda Puri, and Sabritya, also at the servant of Paramananda Puri, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Dharma Palaka. He is a protector of religious principles. And how did he protect religious principles? Nanama Parama Prito Dandavat Sirasa Bhuvi. He offered his Dandavats to Paramananda Puri, and he did that Parama Prito with great love, ecstatic love, to teach us that this is the proper behavior when we come before a Guru Jana. He could have said, well, Paramananda Puri, it's nice, you're the god brother of my guru, but don't you know, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or I'm a sannyasi myself. I don't need to offer respects to you. But because he's Dharma Palaka, he's a protector of Dharma, of religious principles, he offered his Dandavat Pranams to Paramananda Puri. And taught us a very, very important instruction. And there's both a Antaranga Karan and a Bahiranga Karan, an internal and an external reason for his behavior. Externally, he's doing Loka Siksha, and he's teaching us. Because Gauranga Mahaprabhu is Bhakta Rup. He's come in the mood of a devotee to teach us how to act as an acharya by his behavior, to teach us how to practice bhakti. That's the Bahiranga Karn. And the Antaranga Karn, the internal purpose, is that Mahaprabhu wanted to taste the mood of being a devotee. And to taste the mood of being a devotee means we have to behave in a proper way. We have to give respect to all the devotees if we want to get Krishna Bhakti. And we see Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he describes that the devotees in Navadvip, they felt great love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for Nimai Pandit, as he was known then. But he was also very annoying. He was so annoying that even Gadadhar, who naturally loved him from birth, Gadadhar Pandit would avoid him. If he would see him coming, he would go across the street. Because Nimai would want to argue with him and speak all kinds of philosophy and things. But in spite of his annoying behavior, somehow the devotees, they didn't recognize him as being Krishna. Still, the devotees felt some spontaneous attraction for him. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says that they would take bath in the Ganga and they would pray to Krishna, please give Krishna Bhakti to Nimai Pandit. And Vrindavan Das Thakur says that understanding the prayers of the devotees, Gauranga Mahaprabhu accepted their ashirvad because Bhakti Stu Bhagavad Bhakta Sangena Parijayate. The only way that we can get bhakti is by the mercy of the devotees. Krishna Bhakti Jamma Mula Hoya Sadhu Sangha. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says a similar thing, that the birthplace of Krishna Bhakti is Sadhu Sangha. So when Mahaprabhu offered his pranams like this to Uddhava, to Paramananda Puri, who's Uddhava, Paramananda Puri became very, very disturbed. And he said, it's described there, Sasadva sa puribraha maiva kartumi harasi ta eva jagatanato jagat chaitanya karakaha. He became very, very disturbed. Sasadvasa, paripraha. And Paramananda Puri, he said, what are you doing? Maiva kartami hiharasi. This is not appropriate. You shouldn't be offering pranams to me because I know who you are. My Guru Maharaj told me. To eva jagata nata. You're the Jagat Nata. You're the Lord of the three worlds. And Jagat Chaitanya Karakaha. You're the cause of consciousness for the whole universe. You're not just Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but you're Jagat Chaitanya Karaka. You're the original cause of consciousness within everyone. And thinking then that Mahaprabhu may not accept these comments, he says very appropriately, Gyata Sri Bhagavan Sakshat Shri Krishna Bhakta Rupa Drik Shri Radha Bhavam Apano Madhurja Rasa Lampataha. He says, I know who you are. You're Sakshat Krishna. Gyata, I know that. And I'm saying this thing not on my own idea, but by Shastra. Through Shastra, I understand this thing. So you can't argue with me. But you've come Bhakta Rupa Drik. You've come hidden in the form of a devotee. You've accepted that mood of a devotee. You've accepted Sri Radha Bhavam Apano. He said something very, very confidential, Paramananda Puri. He said, you've accepted the mood of Srimati Radharani. Madhurja Rasa Lampata. You're that original Lampata, that original debauchee, who's accepting the Madhurja Ras the mood of Srimati Radharani. And by accepting that mood of Radha, then Lampata also means someone who's plundering, who's taking. You're taking this Madhurya Ras, you're relishing this Madhurya Ras. Now this is a very interesting point, because I don't find it mentioned. It may be in some other places, it may have happened, but it's not directly mentioned in any of the biographies that I've seen, that Madhavendra Puri explained such a thing to Paramananda Puri. He didn't explain that I've seen anywhere that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya, that he's Radha Bhava Duti Suvalitam Nami Krishna Swarupam, that he's Krishna but in the mood of Radha. So what Paramananda Puri is describing here is a very, very confidential understanding of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Some Vaishnavas even, they see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as Gaura Narayan. But that's not what Paramananda Puri is saying. He's saying, I see Sri Radha Bhavam Apano. That you've adopted Apana, you've accepted this mood of Srimati Radharani. And therefore you're Madhurya Rasa Lampata. You're the plunder, the stealer of the wealth of Madhurya Ras. So how is it then that Paramananda Puri knows this? Because Paramananda Puri is Uddhava. And Paramananda Puri, as Uddhava, he saw the mood of the gopis that we find in this Brahma Gita. He saw Srimati Radharani and her situation, her mad talks with the bumblebee. And therefore, Uddhava can understand her mood. And because he understands her mood, then Uddhava, he's the best counselor. He's speaking, as we'll hear later on, he's speaking now to the residents of Vrindavan, especially to Srimati Radharani and the gopis, but also to Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. He's giving everyone pleasure by speaking Krishna Katha. But then later, the same Uddhava who's gone to the school of Braj and learned from the gopis, he comes back to Krishna to share what he saw. And Krishna has to digest that. It's a lot to digest. So there's some talks we'll hear later that take place in Mathura between Krishna and Uddhava. And Krishna's trying to digest this thing. He's hearing about the intense feelings of separation the gopis have for him. And so in trying to digest it, just like you take a big meal, and it may take you some hours to digest it, and you're carrying that meal in your stomach. So Krishna carried this meal in his stomach for some time in Mathura, and he carried it in Dwarka, and he was trying to digest the feelings of the gopis, which he heard about from Uddhava. And Krishna was feeling so much sadness, and therefore he arranged for some meeting with the gopis in Kuruksetra. But even then, he wasn't fully able to digest the feelings of the gopis, because he promises, Yegatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyam. I'll reciprocate however someone approaches me. But even in Kuruksetra, he experiences something. We hear from our acharyas that Krishna has some sympathy, some understanding of the suffering of the gopis. But he hasn't fully understood it. And therefore, he comes again as Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And therefore, Uddhava, he understands because he's seen all this. Uddhava, therefore, Sri Radha Bhavam Apano. So, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, then when he heard Paramananda Puri's words, Mahaprabhu laughed. And he spoke with Paramananda Puri, Marai Gupta says, Sadaram, with great respect, and Premna, with love. He told Uddhava, he told Paramananda Puri, that Bada Hridayam, you're always bound up in my heart. Both in Krishna Lila and in Gaura Lila, you're bound up in my heart. Forever and ever, you're bound up. And you should know this. Ma janihina sangsaya. You should not have any doubt about this. And then Mahaprabhu gave an instruction to Uddhava, very interesting instruction. Gacha Chaitya Maharamya. He said, now Uddhava, previously in the 46th chapter of the 10th canto, Krishna told Uddhava, Gachotava Braja Somya. He used the same word gacha, that you go. But previously Krishna told Uddhava, you go to Braj. Now the same Krishna who's come as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying a similar thing, but instead of Gachotava Braja Somya, telling Uddhava to go to Braj, he's saying Gacha Chaitra. You go to Jagannath Puri, that place which is Maharamya, which is a very, very sweet place. And it's also interesting to me that this word Ramya is also used by Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And he says there that Gopakumar, when he got instructed by Narad Muni, I'm trying to remember the verse, when he was in Dwarka, he told him that you should go to this other place, which is Jagannath Puri, and therefore you'll find that place which is Maha Aishvarja, a greatly opulent place, but it's also Maha Ramyam. It's also a very, very sweet place. You go there to that place, and he gives this description. It's both Maha Aishvarya, a very opulent place, and it's Maha Ramya. It's a greatly sweet place. Well, because Jagannath Puri is like Kuruksetra. Kuruksetra is both of these things. It's a greatly opulent place where all the kings are going with their opulence and their armies and their gold and jewels to give in charity. But at the same time, it's Maharamya. It's a very sweet place because the gopis and the Brijbasis are there. So Mahaprabhu told him, Gachachita Maharamya Yavach Chaha Samabraje. You go there and you wait there Samabraje until I return. Taveva Bhavan Titav Evam Uddhava Yayo Harihi. You take up your residence there, and then go to Hari. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed on his path. So, many, many things that can be said about these things. According to the biographies, Uddhava, some of the biographies describe that Uddhava, Paramananda Puri first went to Navadvip and saw Sachimata and told Sachimata that I just saw your Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So why did he do that? Because Paramananda Puri is Uddhava. And Uddhava, when he first went to Braj, the first place that he went was to the house of Nanda Maharaj to give consolation to Mother Yashoda. And that same Yashoda, Mai, has come in Gaura Lila as Sachimata. And the same Uddhava who gave consolation to Yashoda is now Paramananda Puri giving consolation to Sachimata. And then he went to Jagannath Puri. And according to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Mahaprabhu met him there in Jagannath Puri, here in Jagannath Puri, I should say, Mahaprabhu gave him a place, a confidential place in the Gambhira. So I'm going to stop there. There's a lot more that I'd like to say. We didn't look through the amazing commentaries on this verse from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami, and also some things from Sanatana Goswami. I'd like to go back and review that later on. So if next week, I hope we'll be able to do that. It looks like next week, if Krishna arranges, allows, we'll be in Vrindavan, and we'll be live streaming our class from there, so I can't really say how things will go. But I want to thank all the devotees who've been patiently listening, especially my dear godbrother Raghava Pandit Prabhu and Sarvajit Prabhu, my Gurujan, and Sajjana Maharaj is with him. My humble pranams. Brajabanita is also here. Nice to see you, Brajabanita. And Subal Sham Prabhu. If anybody has any reflections or comments or anything, I would be very grateful if you want to share them. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and we'll stop at this point. Or maybe some of the devotees here in the room have something, some reflection, some prize that you won. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and stop. Okay? Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gopremanandi Hari Hari Bo, Vancha Kalpadarubhischa, Kripa Sindhu Vyeva Cha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Nanda Kori Vaishnavendra ki Jai.